Hello and welcome to my ant channel, Ant Notrodon. Today I'm going to show you my feeding routine for my ants. This is my European harvester ants, Mesobarbarus. I usually just feed them a roach, and I don't really need to feed them seeds because they've been storing them all the time. This colony has been nearly 1 year old, and they're growing. This is where things gets a bit interesting. This is my colony of Myopopilon castagna. They are also known as Dracula ants because they actually drink their own larvae's blood without killing them. Now, this colony has workers, which is really rare in the hobby, and also you wouldn't see a lot of people keeping these ants. They are really special though. As you could see, their larvae are like a worm-like grub, and they would carry their larvae to the prey, so they don't have to carry the prey back to the nest. And then after the larvae is fulfilled, they would just pluck the larvae and then carry them back into the nest. And then the queens are very big. They're basically like Cairbarra size, Cairbarra diversa I mean. But yeah, I'm feeding them a waxworm every 2 to 3 days, depending on if there's workers in the outworld or if I just think it would be quite fun to feed them now. You could see workers carrying larvae around now. Larvae are actually quite soft. You can see them floppy and stuff. And now you can see the workers licking on the protein and the workers trying to fit the larvae on. Oh, never mind. The worker thinks that it's not really a good idea to put the larvae there, and then just gets the larvae back, and the larvae will be hungry. It's just that sad, I guess. This is my colony of Cairbarra diversa, the Asian marauder ants, or I like to call it the false army ants because I just decided that their traits are basically like army ants. They've only discovered this waxworm for just around a minute, and then they just swarm it. Their recruiting speed is incredible, and they like to bury their prey, so you can see roach legs sticking out of the dirt. That is a roach. This is my balcony. I usually get the leaves from my leaf cutters from outside, but sometimes the plants on my balcony can be used too. My attas love rhododendrons, so I'm gonna try to give them some today. I'm gonna try to cut off a piece of rhododendron with these scissors, and I'm going to bring it back and give it a good wash to wash off any pests like aphids or caterpillars or just other foreign ants. Here I'm just giving them a wash in the tap. I'm having some difficulties opening the tap, but there. You just wash the plant and check if there's any bugs on there. I close the tap and then I'll bring it to my leaf cutters. So my leaf cutters are in this room, which is a pretty hot room since of all the electricity running behind. These are my attas, and they have been growing pretty much. They're Attacephalotus. So yeah, they're just processing leaves, they're growing. All the workers are pretty small for now, but I'm sure that they'll grow really, really large later on. And yeah, here's my attas chopping up the rhododendron. You can see some parts of the rhododendron has already been carried back to the nest, but they're just swarming the rhododendron and licking off the moisture on them. They're really happy about just cutting off leaves and throwing them in their trash because they need the saps for their carbs, so I'm not too worried about them just piling leaves in the trash. Apologies for the angle, but because all the other areas are covered with condensation, I have to film like this. This is my Acromyrmex. They're very large, and their colony size are very large too, but yeah. These are my golden weaver ants, Polyrhacus dives. I've had them for a few months, or I could say half a year now, and they've been growing steadily. I have them in a naturalistic setup in a large tank, and I'm gonna show you how I feed them and how much I feed them. This is my crickets. I use them a lot in my feeding times, and my Polyrhacus dives are gonna have 6 of them today. I'm gonna show you how I feed them and how I prepare to feed them. I'm going to put all the chopped up crickets on this plastic lid, so it's gonna be easier for me. I'm not going to show you the chopping up cricket part because it's quite brutal, but I've just finished doing that part and they're actually having 6 today. I'm gonna dump the crickets in and then I'll show you how I do it. I'm basically going to lift off the lamp and I'm going to dump all the crickets in the tank. We don't have to worry about crickets spilling everywhere because we can pick up the crickets with another long tweezers. This is my very long tweezer, or tongs if you call it like that. I'm going to pick up all the crickets that aren't on the feeding spots, so the wood louse wouldn't eat the crickets without the ants even touching it. You'll see me picking them up one by one, so there's 3 that are out of place, but I only picked up 2 in this clip. I'm going to use the tiny tweezer to pick up the next one. I'm also feeding them a dubia roach, so basically I'm feeding them one roach that is chopped in half, and the head would be crushed so the roach doesn't move around. You can kind of see my roach farm here. It's not really a farm, but it's just a place to keep my roaches alive. I have those little rabbit nuggets to make them eat and basically gut load them, but you will see me picking up a roach now. I'm just picking one that is suitable for them, and then I just snatch it, and then there. You get a roach, now we'll just chop it in half. This is the chopped up roach. I'm going to put the roach inside the tank so the ants could have a feast on them too. I'm going to put it in the same spot that I dropped the crickets because that's their feeding spot and they usually just go there and swarm everything. You can see me using a tweezer to carefully put them in and position them so the juicy parts doesn't touch the ground, or else the ants wouldn't have a chance to taste it. You could see them feasting on the insects now. The heating lamp is on because the temperature is set to a certain point and it would turn on and off just to control the temperature. They need quite a high temperature. Now the test tube is where they're putting all their brood in, but they nest behind that ball. I think I will show you later where they nest, but this is their whole tank. This is their setup, and that is their feeding spot. You can see isopods scurrying everywhere, and I don't really need to clean up because the isopods just eat everything, every single piece of trash. This is their weaving spot. It's not quite obvious, but it is slightly raised above ground. Well, it is still connected to the ground, but yeah, the test tube is connected to this part, and I hope it would expand onto the wicker ball so it would become a huge nest. This is my Harpagnathus venators. This is one of my favorite colonies and they're really good at hunting. They also have a great eyesight, which means they can see you. I'm going to be feeding them live crickets, but only small ones because I found out that it is quite hard for them to grab on hold to the larger ones. I'm using some feather tip forceps, which means I wouldn't squeeze the crickets to death, so the ants could have a chance to hunt. Now I'm just dropping the crickets in the enclosure, and I'm giving the ants a chance to actually hunt them by themselves, instead of me just pulling on a leg and I just positioning them in front of the test tube. They won't really accept dead foods, so I'm not going to feed them that dead cricket. I'm only going to feed them live ones that jump around and run around, so they can actually see them and sting them and drag them back to the nest to feed the queen and all the other workers. This is my Tetrapondra Phanigra colony. They are really pretty and also they are dangerous. I'm going to be feeding them some live crickets, and you do not want to get stung by these girls. They would give you an anaphylactic shock in 2 stings or more, and that is not great because that can cause death, so I wouldn't be sticking my hands into the enclosure if I were you. I'm just feeding them live crickets so they can hunt and sting them to death. I was informed that they like to do so, so that's why I'm not feeding them dead food. I'm just picking up more crickets, and I think they're going to have 5 crickets, and later on I'm going to chop up a roach for them, and I'm going to make the roach run around so they would still hunt them. Now I'm going to cut the crickets on top of the container so I wouldn't drip or spill or just contaminate other areas of my room because I still have a carpet. So now you can see the ants hunting, stinging the crickets to death because they need a lot of protein. Look at those brood. They need to feed every single one of them to become an adult ant. So yeah, the queen is producing more and more eggs, and they basically just boom in numbers. This is just some other footage of my Polyrhacus dives eating in the light. The light looks really nice, so I like to film with the light on. So yeah, it's about the timing. These are my Polyrhacus bihamatas, the fishhook ants. They've just arrived and they don't have any eggs yet, which I'm a bit concerned of. But they are huge and they are so pretty. Look at those hooks. They're probably one of the largest species of Polyrhacus, and they are rare. I don't see them sold anywhere else. But yeah, this is one of my good looking and rare species. These are all my test tube colonies. I don't really want to show you how and how much I feed them because it is pretty boring and the video is getting pretty long. But what I want you to do is have a guess of what species is going in this big tank. And also, please suggest what species should go in the small tank. They are both moist tanks, so it's better to have some considerations in those. But yeah, these tanks have been spare, but I'm already planning on to move one species into the larger tank, so yeah, guess that and in the comments below. So